Right. Good afternoon and welcome to Learning Reimagined. I am Allison Dampier and with me, as always, is Sandy Gamba. And we are so excited this week to have a local legend. He is in the same stratosphere as Cher and Madonna. He only needs one name, and it is Kenny. But to those of you not in Washoe County, it is Kenny Cervantes. Welcome, Kenny.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's an honor.
We are so excited to have you. Kenny is a local legend here. He was a middle school administrator, and while I look at that as a very daunting task, he was so beloved by the staff, the students, the parents, and now community-wide. I mean, Kenny is a superstar, and we are just super excited to get him here and talk to him and just share a little bit of his energy for a couple hours, or for an hour, not a couple hours. Kenny. So Kenny, welcome. And for our audience who doesn't know you, why don't you just give us a little bit of background on who you are and how you became Kenny Cervantes, the legend.
Okay, I've lived here all my life. I grew up in Sparks. I was born in Reno, went to Agnes Risley Elementary, Sparks Junior High School, Sparks High School for a year, Reed High. When it opened in '75, I was second graduating class.
Oh, wow.
Onto the community college, and then on to UNR for a teaching degree in physical education and health. And then in 1994, I got my master's in ed leadership. I started in Washoe County as an alternative education teacher. And then I was hired at Billinghurst Middle School by Ken Vaughn in 1990 as a PE teacher when the school opened. I worked there till '96. And under his mentorship, I earned my ed leadership degree. That's when we started the Bighorn Attitude, and we'll talk about that in a little while. So I was PE teacher. Then I went to O'Brien Middle School with Dr. Michelle Collins, who was one of Ken Vaughn's mentors. She was his vice principal at Swope. So she was the principal at O'Brien. I got to work under her. She was fabulous. And then I went to Dilworth in 2005, my first principalship, and I worked under Janet O'Brien, who was my vice principal at Billinghurst. So
oh, wow.
both principals worked under Ken Vaughn, so it was really easy to move into their systems because many of the structures were the same in teaming. Then I became principal at Billinghurst Middle School, 2005 to 2014. So I spent 15 years of my 30 years at Billinghurst.
Wow.
And it was kind of Ken's dream that I would be the principal there, but I just never thought it was going to happen. But I stayed there. And then in 2014, I got a principal on special assignment job, mentoring, teaching first-year principals, professional development and collegial exchange. We had a lot of meetings, had a lot of observations. And then I did professional development for the district. And I did that, and then I retired in 2018.
Oh my gosh. And in a heartbeat, look at all the lives you've impacted. That is amazing.
It really is. Kenny is the energy and the attitude that Kenny has always brought. Even years after he left Billinghurst, I ran into him and he still had the Billinghurst sticker to hand out for the Bighorn Attitude. And you just exude that confidence and just excitement for education, and students know how much you care, and that was just the one thing that was ever apparent with you, is even not the students who are super involved with the school. Like my kids were a little bit on the quieter side, which I don't get because I'm not quiet, but Kenny would still know who they were and he would still welcome everybody. And it was just, you created such an incredible environment and a community in a middle school, where middle school is typically like the toughest age group. And you just flourished, and those kids flourished under your leadership. How did you always know that you wanted to work with that specific age group?
I didn't. I almost didn't take the job at Billinghurst, and Ken Dalton from McQueen High School, where I did my student teaching, called me up and said, Kenny, what are you doing? You need to take this job. Don't be afraid. We'll help you with the PE, because I hadn't taught PE for a while. And he goes, you need to take this job. It's going to be a great opportunity for you. And so I went back and I got the job with Ken Vaughn. And yeah, it was just a natural fit. And I was wondering, why do I get along with middle school students so well? I just can remember being in 7th and 8th grade and how impressive I was with the high school program at Sparks High. And we were a junior high, so there was, the band, we had basketball games. It was more like a high school than a middle school. So I was very impressed with, Sparks High. John Flynn was over there. He had a great basketball program. He ended up being the McQueen principal when McQueen opened. And it was just, it was amazing. So I understand what motivates middle school kids. I understand the subculture. I understand what it was like being that age and how much fun I had.
Yeah, and that says so much about your personality and your impact, because those are formative years. And not only for the students, but how did you convey this message of leadership to your staff? Because it really not just you as a leader, but how do you ignite that same enthusiasm with your teachers and your staff there?
Well, Ken Vaughn opened the school under the Turning Points model of middle school interdisciplinary units or interdisciplinary instruction. And we were the first ones, I know, in Northern Nevada, maybe Nevada, to do this model. So much of it was shared leadership, empowerment with the teachers, and student empowerment. So Ken Vaughn was great about empowering people, sharing his leadership, getting out of the way, letting them do what they needed to do, giving them all the tools and the necessary support that they had to get their job done, and just really conveyed, hey, I'm going to make my decisions based on what's best for the kids, but I'm going to take care of my staff. And professional development was his main thing. So I started with the lady, Net Montoya, in PE, and I really learned how to teach, because movement's hard to teach. So I learned how to be a really, really good instructor. And then when I started my master's in 1994, Ken wanted me to do that. And I really didn't want to do it because I'd been a manager for 8 years before. And I just was tired of managing people. And I just want to have my own program. So as a PE teacher, I had my advisory class. I was the AD for the school. I was in student government leadership. I ordered all this stuff for PE, and it was just awesome, just being an employee for a while. So I started my master's, and another counselor there was taking classes with me, Mark Nelson. And I read this literature by Terrence Steele, The Father of School Culture, in one of my ed leadership classes. And it was like all these things that Ken Vaughn does, that he does intentional about, creating a climate and culture that's safe, creating a climate and culture with high standards, modeling, all these things. I go, he does all this stuff. And so that kind of got me fired up in understanding how important school culture is and safety before you can start on the academics or anything like that. And so when they talk about, research talks about rigor, relevance, and relationships, we know now that it really should be relationships first, because that's where you start. You start with building relationships based on trust and mutual respect, and then creating the safe environment so that kids can take risk in learning and teachers can take risk in learning, because it's very, very similar to get kids to achieve and move forward as it is with teachers. And it takes a lot of coaching.
Can you repeat those for me? Relationships, rigor, and what was the third?
Well, it's rigor, relevance, and relationships.
Relevance.
And that's one of the things that the research says that you need, and you do need all those. But really, it really starts with relationships.
And as an outsider, I can attest to the relationships that you created, the culture that was at that middle school. when I had kids, I dreaded the middle school years. I taught 6th grade, I taught 7th grade, and it is such an awkward age group. They don't know who they are. It's just a wild period of life. And I was always dreading middle school. And then we showed up for 6th grade orientation, and I was blown away. I couldn't wait for my kids to experience essentially you and that world that you built there at Billinghurst. It was such a very special place, and it's truly you, and you did that. I mean, you really, with the influence of Ken Vaughn, who came before you, but you really set the stage for such a special experience for these kids that they were launched into high school very successful, confident, caring. You created an environment of tolerance and compassion within these kids. And it just was such a monumental change for this age group. And I just want to clone you and pick your brain. And how can we get that widespread? You know, how can we help other leaders who are listening to our podcast? What is some advice that you would give to them? Any books that you would suggest? Conferences that you would recommend? Mindsets that you would want them to pursue?
Breaking Ranks is a document about it's for middle school philosophy and interdisciplinary teaming. McCrell Ballast leadership is unbelievable. I was trained in that, and we did training at the district with our administrators. That's a wonderful system. Then it starts at the board and goes to area superintendents, down to principals, down to teachers, and down to students. So it's this unbelievable system which has got best practices in leadership. And I learned so much in that, but I really learned a lot from mentoring, and that's what I ended up doing. But you know, the place to start is, we started in PE. So every kid had to take PE when I was teaching PE. And what Ken Vaughn did is he really disseminated a lot of information through us instead of making announcements. We had advisory every morning where you meet with the teacher and you have that teacher for 20 minutes, and there's a curriculum, talks about study skills. One day you do organization, another day is SSR, and then there's another day for just the curriculum and another day for team building. So you have this one-on-one advisor every day. Then you have your core team, which is like a family. So you have the same social studies teacher, English teacher, and science teacher for 2 years. So you're with 90 kids for 2 years. That is your team. They have a team cheer, they have a team logo, that's your family. You are responsible to them. So it creates this type of peer pressure. So outside that, he really wanted to have excellent, great elective programs, which he did. The band, the drama, the plays, the strings, all the electives were very, very good. It wasn't just the core academics, but we started with safety. So what Annette said is, hey, there's no put downs. And if you put somebody down, you've got to say 3 nice things about them in front of the entire class. And it couldn't be nice shoes, nice hair. It had to be, hey, I like the way that you worked today. I like the way that you were a team member. I like the way that you helped Kenny with his shooting. And so it was all this thing about no put downs. And, you know, kids that call me, Mr. C, that's a put down. That's right. So we had this whole thing about, hey, nobody's going to be able to learn unless it's safe. And if somebody's standing up there in class answering a question and they don't answer it right, nobody gets the cap on them because they're going to get called on the floor. So it was just, that is the first thing in this whole mutual respect. After I read the book on Terrence Steele and I graduated, I myself and some teachers at Billinghurst wrote the story about the Bighorn Attitude, and it was really based on Ken Vaughn's style of leadership. But what came out of it were the 14 components of the Bighorn Attitude: believing in yourself, maintaining a positive work ethic, teamwork, sacrifice, never putting others down, learning from defeat, seeking challenges, tolerance, school esteem, honesty, leadership, accepting constructive criticism, high personal standards, having the courage to be different. So what we did is we came up with an award. 10 boys and 10 girls got nominated, and the winner has their name in the gym. on a banner says Bighorn Attitude. And then on the other wall, it's a big storyboard, and it's about the Bighorn Attitude. The Bighorn's on there, and thunder, and a lake where Ken met the Bighorn. And you know, Ken's quote was on there, and it said, "We had a great team. We did what was best for kids." So that was Ken's legacy statement. So that's how we came up with the Bighorn Attitude. So then we use that, you know, as to motivate kids to really try to do their best every day, making their school a better place than it was when they started, leaving an indelible footprint. We would talk to the if you were a fifth grader, we go out to the fifth grade schools before they came in, and we talk about the Bighorn Attitude, talk about the stickers. And I would just leave the kids in fifth grade. I'd say, I don't want you to worry about your classes. What I want you to do is think about the Bighorn Attitude and how you can leave an indelible footprint in that school next year, or when you leave as an eighth grader. And you don't have to be, we have so many activities for kids. We want them to get engaged. But if you don't want to do that stuff, that's okay. If you're positive, you're not putting people down, and you're giving 100% every day, you are going to make that school a better place. Then I just talk about how this transcends on an adult level, because I would talk to the kids about this and I say, really, you guys, this is how I pick my basketball team. You know, these are the things I look at, because if you don't have a good attitude, I don't really care how good you are. I'm going to take a kid with less skills and I'm going to teach them because they're going to give me 100%. When I came back as an administrator, I said the same thing. I said, guys, this is what I look for when I hire teachers. These are the intangibles that you have to get to the next level. This is the difference between good to great. And so I try to bring it at them, you know, on an adult level, student level, so they can see. And, you know, they really, when I run into kids, they're 40 now. We have a conversation. I don't have to tell them or ask them, you know, what are you doing? You know, did you go to college? Whatever. They tell me, and whether they went to college or they just got a good job, they're really happy. But really, we're both kind of looking at each other going, does she still have the Bighorn Attitude? Does Mr. C still have the Bighorn? You know, you just got that eye-to-eye contact. That's what we're looking at. And just all those great memories. So then I went to O'Brien, went to Dilworth for 5 years, and came back. And the parent club said, hey, we really want to expand on the Bighorn Attitude. So I said, okay. So we took all the components, and each team gave a definition of what the Bighorn Attitude was, and it was on the wall in the gym. And then a parent said to me, hey, Kenny, you know, this Bighorn Attitude Award is kind of comes out of the sports, and yeah, it has an athletic component to it. Why don't you have something for, you know, kids that aren't in sports? And I said, you're exactly right. So we came up with the Ken Vaughn Achievement Award. So when you walk into the school, you'll see all the names of the kids that won the Ken Vaughn Achievement Award. And those are based on Ken Vaughn's attributes. And I won't read all the stories, the whole story to you, but it's about vision, attitude, how optimistic he was. He demonstrated kindness, goodwill, and modesty. He was purpose-focused, highly motivated, and worked with a sense of mission. Integrity, reputation, and quality relationships were a mark of his craftsmanship. He always thought carefully before he spoke. Finally, he left an indelible footprint and improved thousands of lives in our district. So now we have 2 awards that kids can shoot for. And it's, you know, it's a great thing, because if you're nominated, that's great, but it's not the only way that we motivate kids to have the Bighorn Attitude.
Yeah,
You know,
Kenny, he was the king of having these Bighorn stickers. And for years, even after my kids had left, I still had it on the back of my phone because it mattered. Like, he would show up to meetings, and because you're present, because you're participating, he'd give you these stickers, and they matter. My daughter, who's in college, she's a sophomore in college, she still has her sticker. She has one on her bulletin board in her bedroom, because I mean, it's just a penny sticker or whatever, but the thought behind it and what it represents is so impactful and meaningful that just taking the time to have those, it mattered. It really mattered.
Well, and it was, go ahead.
No, I'm just so excited. I didn't mean to interrupt you, Ken. Just just the impact of building such a program and how it will change lives, these young lives. Then, as you mentioned, it really is transformative as they take these lessons into high school, as it forms them, whether they go to college or what their life goals are, and that mutual respect and all of those incredible traits that are outlined for each of these programs, it really is instilled in them. And it just, what an impact to the community. I just, bravo, that is incredible. And I wish we could replicate that and, you know, have that kind of a structure where it can be implemented at such a level. But that's phenomenal that you are able to do that and continue that legacy and see that.
Yeah, it was very, very special. One of the other ways that we motivate kids is we believe that everybody wants efficacy, teachers, parents, and students. So you build the foundation of trust and respect. Then we ask the teachers to differentiate their relationships with every student that they have, just like they differentiate their instruction, which is really, you know, teachers that do that are over the top, and we have so many in our district that can do that. These are some of the things that motivate the kids: being on a team where you're responsible to the team, knowing that you have an adult that really cares about you. What I would say to the kids and to the parents when I would meet with them on the first night, I would say, look, I want the same thing for your students, for your kids, as I want for Michael and Kendall. I want them to be articulate. I want them to be confident. I want them to be able to walk into any interview and show that they've got the ability to be confident, demonstrate these intangibles, have a choice in the job that they want. They may not go to college. They may have to go to college, but every one of the kids in this school, my kids, I want them to be able to compete globally with anybody. That's just was our mission as a school. We're going to put you guys, give you the, you know, the opportunity and the support to move from good to great. We would talk about this. We would have academic assemblies where we would honor the kids for academics, test scores, improvement. We would bring kids from McQueen down that were former Bighorn Attitude winners and have them talk about the importance of CRT testing, have the cheerleaders out there do so that. We would have, you know, writing contests against other schools. So the 8th grade writing contest, if you had the best scores, you get a banner. We had algebra CBE, credit by exam, against, you know, competition against other schools. We had sports, we had student government. We had the stickers again, when I give the stickers to kids for demonstrating the Bighorn Attitude, and I'd give them to teachers for demonstrating the Bighorn Attitude. It's the same language for teachers and students. We had a new system where we had Bighorn bucks that Sherry Lynn Cutler created. For the tracks matrix, they would get that. They'd go to the student store. We would call home for student of the week, tell the parents how great their student was, give them a bunch of rewards. You could be in BNN, Billinghurst News Network, the hottest education station in the nation. We had dances, team dances, where the teams would put the dances on. So if you have, you know, like 6 advisories, each advisory being in charge of something: decorations, games and activities, advertisement, and then we'd have the kids do their own DJ.
Oh, that's so fun.
Yeah, because when I started at Billinghurst, my brother and I were DJs, and we didn't have any equipment. So Ken Vaughn said, hey, I'll let you use the equipment if you do all the dances. So we had the kids do the dances, and it was awesome.
That's so neat.
So the idea was, you know, you're asking about how do you build this? The idea is that you build a culture where learning is as much of a valued perspective as athletics is. And so it's cool to be smart.
Yeah.
And kids, you know, come out and they're talking about how great things were in class and things like that. So that's kind of really how Ken Vaughn did that. And he used his elective teachers and really empowered, you know, students and teachers to kind of work at the same thing. Have the
Yeah,
Bighorn attitude.
It's awesome. So now you're retired, you say retired. That just means you don't have to be at the same place every day in my book, because I know you're not really retired. How do you, in what you do in the daily life now, how are you living the Bighorn attitude now? How does it affect you and impact your life now?
You know, it's funny when you retire, you think about, well, where did it all start? I mean, it really started with my dad, and, you know, his ability to help any kids. You know, he used to coach, he worked at Nevada Bell, he was in the Air Force, he was in the Army National Guard, and he was able to coach and be a leader. He's mentored so many men in this community. He's just probably one of the most popular, admired guys in the building. And I remember, or in the city. And I remember being at Dilworth Middle School, and George Maldonado played for the Giants. He played Major League Baseball, and it was really, you know, he passed away, but he came over, he worked for State Farm. Right when I got my principalship, he came in, he goes, Kenny, let me show you how to tie your tie. And he goes, I just want to tell you a couple of things. We want you to really happy you're here. We want you to be successful, anything that you need. And I want you to know this job you got right here is just as simple as this, Kenny. He goes, your dad wants you to out achieve him and do better than he did in his lifetime. That's the same thing with school. You got to have the kids, you know, make the school better than it was for generations to come. And it was like, that is really a simple, you know, leave an indelible footprint. So it makes me reflect on, you know, where it all started, where it came from, and now working with the company that I work with, C&M Construction and Kleinfelder. I see how important that culture is to them, because the onboarding process with them, it's all about people. It's all about collaboration. It's all about relationships. It's all about safety. So it's really nice to see that on a different level. And that, you know, that we told kids, hey, we're going to put you with other students that you don't know, you may not like, that are different than you. We're going to do it intentionally, because you have to work with people like that in the real world, and you may not be best friends with them. That's okay, but you still have to have mutual respect. And that's what I feel good about, you know, that those kids, our kids that we sent out through the middle school, you know, teaming process, and all the other middle schools did the same thing, really, really prepared kids for adult life.
Yeah, I've referenced this book quite a few times on our podcast. It's Yes, My Teenager is Crazy. And this is the book that gave me nightmares before my children went to middle school, because they in the book, they talk about how people have a need to belong. And especially when you look at this age group, they'll go to whatever group pulls the hardest. They have such a need to have a place to be. And what you did at your school was create the teams, and the kids then had a place to belong. So they weren't, not to say that it kept everybody out of trouble, but it really gave them a lot more, a more positive benefit, so that they could belong to a team and not get pulled by the drug dealers or the dropouts, or, you know, the negative impact. They had a safe place and they had ownership. And I think creating those teams, it's so important in the middle, especially with middle school, because it's such a gray area. They're no longer a part of, you know, Mrs. Carter's homeroom or room 5 or whatever it happens to be in elementary school. In a lot of middle schools, you're pretty much just a number, because these teachers have, you know, 200, 300 kids a day. But having that advisory period and that team really changes the script for them. It changes the whole narrative of what middle school is. And it just such, if that would be the one thing I would say that really made a difference at Billinghurst, along with the culture and the attitude, but starting right there with having the team atmosphere and gave them that sense of belonging was such an amazing starting point for them. It's so important.
And that they started in 5th grade, because they were reaching out to them and just getting them ready for, this is the exciting piece that awaits for you, you know, just that they can make an impact too. Because at the end of the day, we all want to matter. And I think with the intentionality of this whole program, that's what you achieved, and so much more, that everybody did matter.
Well, and I
Yeah.
think when you go back to rigor, relevance, and relationships, I look back on, O'Brien, Dilworth, and Billinghurst, and how the student-centered instruction and the interdisciplinary teaching. So you're taking a common theme like aviation, and you would study the history of it in history. You might do a science project or study the science of flying, and then write about that concept in English. Allows kids to think, and use their higher level thinking skills. And I love the reciprocal teaching when the kids would lead the skill or lead the lesson. I loved the presentations that the kids would do together. I loved it when you would walk into an English class and they would have, I don't know, 4 or 5 different centers in groups of 3 moving through those centers. And the instruction, the research-based instruction it was amazing how much we got out of our students in such a short period of time, because it's so hard to get all the standards in, but it's a great way to teach.
Yeah, I agree. So speaking of teaching, you're out of the actual school system now. What are your thoughts on the current trajectory of school here in Nevada? How do you feel the way of education is going?
Well, I think COVID really, took us obviously a step back. I mean, I had Kendall at home from University of Utah, and she was doing all her classes. I think it really shows how important face-to-face communication is. I think it reinforces so many of the things that we need, like you talked about. It's kind of like Maslow's hierarchy of need. You need to have food, shelter, water, love, a need to be in a relationship. And I just think that it emphasizes that. I think hopefully you'll see it come back and go, yeah, we really miss face-to-face contact. I know that does for the kids in high school and the ones that have been out. I think, moving forward, I think it's still going to be about best practices. I think it's still going to be about collaboration. I think it's going to be about mastery of learning. I think it's going to be about best practices. I don't think any of that's going to change. I just think it's going to be tough for teachers to hang in there through this, through what they're going through right now. And it's not just hard on teachers, it's hard on parents, and it's hard on kids. It's hard on everybody. But, God bless them. I mean, they've just hung tough through this whole thing. And I had, when I was mentoring, I had 40 principals at one time. And I just think about them every day and hope they can all make it through and get through this transition.
Yeah, it's, I've never seen anything like this before. Sandy?
No, I just conferring, it is, we are making history, for better or for worse, and how we get through this. And these young adults young kids are watching us navigate through this as well. So the impact is real, and trying to get through this. And I just, all of it makes so much sense. And you have this foundation in place with your wonderful schools that you've left these programs in. And that's a very wonderful path to have all these things still be able to work. But I do worry about all those other schools that don't have that same foundation. And how do they achieve that?
Yeah, even the schools with the solid foundation, the teachers are still having incredible burnout. The administrators, it's terrifying. It's terrifying to me. What advice would you give those young administrators and the teachers that are contemplating their futures?
I mean, just try to find, remember why you get up every day, what it used to feel like, to see students learn. What is the magic that turns you on every day? My thing was just being able to walk through the classes and watch the students and the teachers interact. My thing when I taught was just that, when I would say that one that one phrase that could connect with the kid and they would really understand it, whether it was, helping them out or it was the actual learning process, the magic of learning. If they can kind of just hang on to that, because things are going to get better, they're going to get back to the way that they were. And I think I know people appreciate administrators and teachers and what they do, but and parents, because it's all the same thing, but they're going to have a deeper appreciation for them. I mean, because kids need that contact, that one-to-one relationship. They need that person in the classroom that they want to impress. They need that person in the classroom that gives them efficacy. They need that person in the classroom that gives them challenges and hope.
Yeah, that's good advice. They really do. They need it. They need it. So looking back on your career, what would be the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Well, I wrote down, I have some things that I used when I was the principal on special assignment that I gave to my principals, and that I learned. Some of this I learned through McCrow Balanced Leadership, some through Breaking Ranks, a lot of it through that my mentors gave me. And one thing is, if you're going in as a first-year principal, you need to be vulnerable. And so you need to come in with the idea of, I'm not going to change everything the first year, and I don't have to prove myself. What I need to do is come in and honor the traditions, the curriculum, everything that they have in place. I want to honor that and then highlight it with my abilities, complement it with my abilities. But to come in and try to change things, that's not successful. But my entry point was, as you come into a new school and you're talking to people, what do you want them to know about you? Well, you want them to know that, one, because they're going to be checking you out. I make decisions based on, it's like first day with the teacher. What's this guy like? He makes decisions based on what's best for students. He's like Ken Vaughn. He's a kid guy. But at the same time, I think leading with instructional leadership to know that, hey, kids are important, teachers are important, professional development is really important, mastery of learning is really important. So that's kind of your keystone that you're talking about and projecting. Because once you get into the classroom with that teacher, Debbie Silke always said, instruction is the second most personal thing that we do. And instruction is really personal. And if you're going to articulate somebody's instruction, it's like I guess what you want somebody to say after you go do your observation and then you do the reflection conference and you write their evaluation and you give it to them and they read it, you want them to say, wow, you really know me. And so we spent a lot of time talking about what you do in the first year and, how they didn't have this when I first started, but the metacognition and getting teachers to think about their teaching through reflection. And that's a great way to learn. That would be advice that I would give anybody, or I would like to have that when I started. I didn't have the metacognition training or the coaching training when I started, and that's a big thing.
Yeah, that's great. Do you miss that mentorship role that you had?
Yeah, I really did. And I was trying to think today, what did you like? I mean, what was your favorite job? Was it teaching PE? Was it vice principal at O'Brien? Was it principal at Dill? What was it? Or was it mentoring? And it was really hard I couldn't come up with what my favorite one was, because each of them was just awesome. And being able to interact with kids and being able to, learn with teachers and learn from teachers and work with parents. I would always say to the parents, there's no silver bullet in education, but if there was one, it's parents. And if you can engage your parents and they understand your vision and mission, and hard work and a good attitude is pretty easy to get behind, you're going to have, it's going to be a lot easier and you're going to be more successful if they understand what you're doing.
That is
So what's the answer?
insightful.
What's the favorite job?
It
know,
sounded like it was a little bit of everything.
A little bit of
I
all.
think.
I don't know. It's too hard. I can't tell.
Well, Ken, in your vast experience, and now that you're in this new chapter in your life and still working with all these incredible concepts, what, as you filled so many other people's cups with motivation and light, what fills your cup at the end of the day? How do you maintain your level of excellence as you wake up every morning? What fills you?
Just learning. I mean, I don't understand how I get really lucky with this job. Allison Kendrick always says, she worked with me at professional development and we did the mentoring together. And she said, I don't know how Kenny always gets these jobs, and he gets the best jobs. I always wanted to be, when I was young, I wanted to be an architect, but I didn't go to school for that. So I've always been fascinated with school buildings, like Sparks High, Reno High, that old brick. And then I went to Reed, it was opened. My best friend and I, Gene Cudworth, Clark and Sullivan went on strike. So our sophomore year, we had to split the day with Sparks. So we were still there with all of our friends as sophomores. We went to school in the morning, they went to school in the afternoon, and we would ride our bike. We'd ride our bike through Reed High because it was still being built and they were on strike. So I've always had a fascination with schools. And so this job, is amazing because I get to see a school being built. I get to see what the principal does when, they're preparing for a new school. I get to see where the copy machines go. I get to understand how the buy lists work. I get to understand how the warehouse is going to work. I get to understand how curriculum gets improved or approved. So it's just learning, I just, like to keep learning, like to, learn new stuff. So the other thing is being able to support my kids. Michael's in Arizona, third year as a school site. Kendall's in Salt Lake at University of Utah, finishing her nursing degree. I can help my wife, Lindy, with Jackson, her son at Reno. I can support them when they need things. So I'm super busy.
So do you take time for you at all?
Yeah, I mean, Lindy's got me on the Peloton, so I'm getting the
Nice.
workout going. I'm getting my butt kicked by Selena.
I love it.
I'm in I'm in Somerset. I'm in the golf community out here, and Stuart Smith's giving me lessons, and I'm trying to get better.
Nice.
And so it's just a challenge. And I just, wake up kind of the same way I did when I was teaching. I just never had a day. And I always tell students this, you got to find a job that you love, man. I go, my job is really hard, really stressful, but my paycheck is seeing you guys when you get older and telling me how great you're doing and how great school was. And I mean, I get up with the same thing every day. I never had a day where I didn't want to go to school. And, so I kind of look at this as, what's my job for the day? What's the errands do I have to run? I got to go work the dog out. I got to go shopping. I got to get the workout in. I got to go to work part-time. So it's awesome.
That's fantastic. We've been doing this podcast now for over a year, and my kids, they're supportive and, yay, good job, Mom. Okay, I like your post. However, they've never been excited to really listen to an episode until I told them that Kenny was going to be on it. And they both are, when is he going to be on? We want to listen. So your legacy continues. You still incite such excitement wherever you go. The kids, Maya she's never been super into this whole podcast for me. And she called me, she goes, okay, you saw Kenny, when is it going to post? When is it going to be on? She wants to hear what you have to say. You really, really matter, and you've made such a difference, and you continue to make a difference. So we're so honored to have you in our community. Sandy and I are honored to have you here on our podcast today. And our listeners, you guys been introduced to a legend here. And so we really appreciate your time, Kenny.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you. It was an honor.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.